My name is Amanda Backus. I'm 39 years old, and I was just diagnosed last Friday, January 15th, with triple negative breast cancer stage 3. A few weeks ago, I was getting ready to walk upstairs and I opened our doggy gate and it hit my breast. And it hurt more than it should have for the impact that happened. So, first reaction is you feel your chest, and I noticed that it was swollen and very full feeling. The best way I can describe it is if you've breastfed, that fullness you get when your breasts are full. That's the best way I can describe it. I called the next day to get an appointment and was able to see my primary doctor a few days later. And she was concerned immediately and scheduled me for a mammogram. I was fortunate enough to get into this mammogram the following day because they had an opening at one of the local breast cancer centers. And they did the mammogram, and then they sent me for an ultrasound. So when they did that, that voice in the back of your head, that was talking to me at that point, that something wasn't right. And so after they did the ultrasound, I went back to the waiting room and was then told that I needed to have a biopsy and a fine needle aspiration because there was a suspicious area, actually multiple suspicious areas they found in my right breast. And they were concerned about the lymph nodes from the ultrasound that they did. So they did a biopsy with a fine needle aspiration, and then I played the waiting game. Last Tuesday, I received a phone call from the radiologist that confirmed I have breast cancer, and then it had spread into the lymph nodes. He couldn't tell me what type and what stage it was at, or really any other information. I had to wait. Last Friday, the 15th, is when I met with the surgeon that works at the breast cancer center, and she told me that you have stage 3 cancer. It is possible that this is stage 4, but since I haven't had scans to rule this out, they're calling it stage 3 at this point. It was triple negative, meaning it's negative for estrogen, progesterone, and HER2 receptors. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's good. Negative is good. Until I got home. And then I started doing, research. Sometimes education and knowledge is a double-edged sword. So when I looked into this diagnosis, I found out that this is one of the most aggressive, fast-growing cancers that young women get. Needless to say, I've had a lot of tears in the last several days. It's, of course, really scary to hear that you have this diagnosis. And then you start reading about the survivability rates at 5 years for stage 3 and for stage 4, and your heart sinks even further. And then you wonder how you're going to tell your family, not to mention the fact that you lose control over your life in just a matter of days. I'm self-employed. I'm always on the go. I'm always driving all over the place for work because that's what my job entails. And since I was 18 years old, I've been very independent. Raised 3 boys on my own for several years. And I'm just used to doing my thing. And it just changed overnight. So that's probably been the hardest thing, not to mention trying to be positive when you're telling your loved ones what's going on, when inside you just want to like curl up in bed and ignore the world. I'm married with a very supportive and loving husband. I couldn't ask for a better spouse to help me through this. And I have 3 boys, a 19-year-old son in college, a 16-year-old son that's a junior, and a 13-year-old son in middle school that thinks he's going on 30. You know how that goes. The hardest thing right now, besides the loss of control and feeling like your body is a traitor, is the not knowing what I'm really facing yet. Not knowing if this is truly stage 3 or if this is stage 4. Especially when you feel fine. You don't feel sick. I mean, blessings sometimes come in weird ways, but if I wouldn't have hit my breast on the dog gate, I would have not gotten a mammogram until I turned 40 later this year. So I'm really, really grateful that these things happen. That is really a blessing for me that it was caught now instead of several months from now when I turn 40. So I was told that I need to have chemotherapy first to shrink the tumors, the cancer, and then undergo a mastectomy, and then either have more chemotherapy after that or radiation, depending upon how my body responds to things. I was supposed to have my port placed yesterday, but with the pre-screening and COVID last Friday, right after the appointment with the surgeon, they did the swab and they called me the following morning and said, "Oh, surprise, you're COVID positive." Weirdly enough, I'm 6 days out from that diagnosis and I don't have any symptoms. Not a sniffle, minus I'm crying and you know how that goes. No cough, no fever, no aches, no GI problems, nothing. I feel fine. So that's delayed things for me. So the port and placement has been rescheduled for next week, along with the scans to rule out stage 4. And then the first week of February is when I meet with the oncologist and also have an echo to check my heart before I start chemotherapy. I'm pretty healthy. I'm hopeful that that will all be into my favor for getting through this. Hollywood always makes the worst of a lot of things, but I know chemotherapy is serious and it has a lot of really nasty side effects. So I'm hoping that because I'm in good health, that it's gonna help me out. So the reason I'm making this video is when I was researching this on YouTube, I noticed that there's a lot of interviews and videos by oncologists, researchers, surgeons, and then some interviews with patients that have been going through this treatment and survived or are still undergoing treatment. And I noticed that there was no channel that I could find. Again, I couldn't find one of anybody that was actually going through this at this time and what their journey was or what it had been. So I want to document this journey. I want to let people know that they're not alone in this diagnosis and that there's others out there going through what you're going through right now. Maybe my experience and what I've gone through will maybe be helpful to somebody else. I will upload videos to let you guys know how I'm doing one way or another. And I'll keep you in the loop about tests and how treatment is going. It's hard to connect with people because of all the restrictions going on with COVID right now. My hope is I can connect with others that have gone through this and can provide some guidance and some realistic expectations. I talked to my grandmothers. Both of my grandmothers are still alive. And my paternal grandmother told me that her 3 sisters all had breast cancer. And I didn't know that. It was nothing that ever came up. I don't live anywhere near the rest of my family. They all live in Minnesota and North Dakota, and I'm down here in Lexington, Kentucky. So that wasn't something that I knew of to be able to tell my doctors at my physicals that I had that strong of a history of breast cancer in my family. Both of my grandmothers have had breast cancer. Not the same type as I did, and they were diagnosed after 60. They underwent treatment, and they've been cancer-free for several years now. But I didn't know this kind of history, and that I could have gotten a mammogram several years ago. So my best advice right now, besides trying to stay positive at this time when you first find this stuff out, is know your family history. Talk to your family. If you need to, write down who's had cancer in your family, when they had it, what kind of cancer, what stage it was found out. Find out any information